Hi, I'm Liz Voiles, and I am the communications lead for the Center for Election Innovation and Research. Thanks so much for joining us. During this webinar, you will hear about the Election Official Legal Defense Network from the project's leadership, staff, and 2 Arizona election officials who serve as advisory board members of EOLDN. Today, you're going to hear from David Becker, who's Executive Director for the Center for Election Innovation and Research and EOLDN, Angie Pitha, who is Project Lead for EOLDN, Bill Gates, who is Supervisor for Maricopa County, and Lisa Marra, who serves as Deputy Director of Elections for the state of Arizona. After you hear from our speakers, you will be able to ask questions. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen at any point during the presentation, and we will get to them during the Q&A. Thanks again for joining us, and here's David Becker.
Thanks, Liz, and hi, everyone. As you can see from behind me, we're having a bit of a snow day here in Washington, which having talked to Bill and Lisa about it, it sounds a little different than what you might be experiencing in Arizona. But it's the rare, beautiful winter day here in Washington. For those of you that don't know me, and I do recognize several names, and I'm so glad you've joined us. I'm David Becker. I'm the Executive Director and founder of the nonpartisan nonprofit Center for Election Innovation and Research in Washington, D.C. What we do, we founded it in 2016 to assist election officials, first and foremost, in providing elections that voters should trust and do trust. And as we know, over the last several years, there's been more and more of a chasm between that should trust and do trust, as you have all done amazing work with transparent, secure, verified elections time and time again under great stress. There's still a gap between that reality and what some people perceive. So first and foremost, thank you all for what you're doing. You and your colleagues all over the country have been engaged in work that's so important, often under incredible stress, often with inadequate resources, often being attacked for having done such a good job by people who are disappointed in the outcome of elections and fueled by toxic lies about past elections. That environment is really why CEIR started the Election Official Legal Defense Network. Back in the aftermath of the 2020 election, we were seeing reports, and in my work talking to election officials all over the country, hearing about just vile threats being levied at election officials, at their families, sometimes even at their children, at seeing the abuse and harassment that was that election officials were experiencing, and seeing the toll it was taking on you all, on the public servants that give us all a voice. And I started a conversation with Bob Bauer, who's President Obama's former White House counsel, and Ben Ginsberg, who's the former campaign counsel to George W. Bush and Mitt Romney, about this problem. And we all perceived it similarly. This was not a partisan problem. This was not a Democrat versus Republican problem. This is supporting civil servants and public servants who make our democracy work, regardless of their party, regardless of what the outcome of elections were. And they really had the idea to form a network of attorneys who would be available pro bono to assist election officials as they considered some of these new challenges they were facing, whether they be threats and harassment or abuse of public records requests or any other kinds of unusual things that were happening that, from our experience and in talking to election officials, sometimes they weren't getting adequate support from their own government attorneys. Sometimes their county boards and county attorneys were part of the problem. And they really needed someone to turn to, hopefully not out of pocket, to get good advice about how to handle a situation. And we founded it in September of 2021. We didn't really know what to expect. But since that time, we've assisted dozens and dozens of election officials We don't ever say the exact number. We don't ever identify any individual who's asked for advice. That's completely confidential. If they want to admit that they received advice and help from EOLDN, that's wonderful, but the election official owns this in every way. And sadly, what we've seen in now over 2 years of EOLDN's existence is that the need for these services, the requests that are coming in from election officials, isn't dying down. I would even say we saw an uptick in the second half of last year in an odd numbered year. And we're still seeing a consistent level of requests coming in for assistance. We are doing these webinars to first make everyone aware that EOLDN exists and what it is. And we're also working to do outreach to the legal community. We've recruited hundreds and hundreds of individual lawyers and are working with dozens of law firms nationally so that we can ensure whenever a request comes in, our commitment to you is to be in touch with you immediately, get you paired with a lawyer as soon as possible, usually a matter of a few business days at the most, so that you and the lawyer on a pro bono basis can confer and help you. And we've been very proud to provide that service. I hope one day we won't have to provide it anymore, but we're very proud to provide it for now. One thing we've just recently added to EOLDN as well, and you'll keep hearing this, but you can find everything you need at EOLDN.org. That's the initials in Election Official Legal Defense Network. We kept hearing from election officials that they were experiencing challenges with communications, with spreading accurate information, particularly in light of the flood of disinformation that's coming in, and how often it was just sucking up all of their bandwidth, how often there were rapid response scenarios due to a particular piece of disinformation, excuse me, that they needed help with. And so we launched a second part of EOLDN, which is communication support for election officials. This is still free to election officials who request it. We have retained a communications firm, Experts. It is a firm run by Mitt Romney's former campaign manager. And if a request comes in, we pair you with a communications professional who will help you with what you need, whatever project you're working on. It could be for advanced planning. You might want kind of a communications plan for 2024 or for something else, or it could be some kind of urgent request. You have a particular piece of disinformation that you need to respond to and you need some help. Either way, same thing, go onto EOLDN.org, you can make a request and we'll get in touch with you right away. Usually you're paired with a communications professional very, very quickly because, like I said, we have these, we have them retained. I do want to note before I hand it off to the other speakers, you're probably aware Arizona has a somewhat of a ban on third-party funding of election administration. I think you're all aware of that. This should not prevent you from making a request. If you have a need, make a request. You can then talk to your lawyer about how that impacts it. We believe there are circumstances where help through EOLDN is likely appropriate, but that's something for you and your lawyer to discuss. So whether it's communications assistance or legal assistance, don't let the idea that a third-party ban prevent you from making a request. That's something you can discuss with your lawyer to see whether or not it's appropriate. We wouldn't be talking to you otherwise. So please don't self-select out just because it might appear to not comply with Arizona law. The lawyers will help you assess whether it is and whether it's appropriate, and that's something we commit to you. So with that, we're going to get other speakers to talk about kind of EOLDN and how it works. The first speaker I'm going to hand it off to is someone I'm just very proud to call a friend, who the quantity of time we've known each other, Bill, isn't that long, but the quality has been quite high.
Agreed.
Bill, in my mind, is a hero. He's someone who, as you know, currently serves on the Board of Supervisors for Maricopa County, who in that work managed very successful elections in Maricopa under some of the most trying circumstances, stood up for the truth consistently at great personal cost. And I'm just incredibly honored to know him. As you know, Bill's a lifelong Republican. Bill's been working in the election space for a long time as a Republican Party lawyer. And he's been, since some of this harassment, he's spoken very honestly and truthfully about the stresses he's felt. And I know from talking to a lot of election officials, and Bill's heard me say this, election officials have come to me and asked how to get a hold of Bill, because what he has courageously expressed publicly is what they've been experiencing privately, and they didn't know there was a community to support them. And EOLDN is part of that community, as well as all of you. So it's my great pleasure. Let me hand it off to Bill. He's an advisory board member of EOLDN, to talk a little bit about EOLDN and what we do.
Well, thanks, David. Really appreciate the kind comments, and I can't say enough about CEIR and EOLDN. And David, your leadership has made a big difference in the lives of many of us who are involved in the election space. And you've allowed a lot of us to get together to meet one another. And this is yet another example, even though we're not sitting around the table here, I think that these opportunities are invaluable. And I just want to thank everybody who's on this Zoom today. I have great respect for all of you. Very excited to see all the folks who are joining us today from across Arizona. And you know, that really is one of the main things that's come out of all this for me, is to realize a bond that all of us have, whether we are an elected official in the stream of elections, an elections administrator, a poll worker, or even, like David referenced, someone like me who was an election day operations lawyer for the Republican Party for many years. We all have that common bond, which I think is really a love of elections and the joy that's involved in this. It's truly the base of our democracy. And I think, like probably everyone on this Zoom, I never could have imagined that we would be at this point where we would have to defend the integrity of elections in such a fierce way. But that's why I'm so grateful again for people like David and his team for allowing us to do that. I am a lawyer, so I'm well aware of, you know, the challenges that you can face in representing a client and some of the interesting conflict issues that arise. But honestly, I never could have imagined that there'd be situations where, you know, in our case here in Arizona, you know, a county attorney could not represent their client for you know, a particular reason. And we say this a lot, but Lisa is truly the poster child for this, and I'm looking forward to you all hearing her story if you haven't heard it before. My story is different, and that is the story of Maricopa County. And you know, we've got a lot of people in Maricopa County, a lot of elected officials, Republicans, Democrats, people coming from the East Valley, people from the West Valley, from all different perspectives. And yet we have been so blessed to be a unified team on this. I think, as many of you know, back in 2021, when we had to defend our workers, and I know I see Christy Passarelli's on the list here. She could speak much more eloquently about this than I can. But you know, our workers came under attack, were accused of literally committing crimes. And we had been quiet, like people in elections are so often, right? We don't want to be the story. We want to keep our heads down. But we decided, along with Stephen Richer, who we've got to razz him for not being here, but we miss him and we love him. But all of us, we said enough is enough, and we stepped up and we spoke out in favor of the election workers. And I was pleased to see my fellow Board of Supervisors members and, of course, Stephen Richer. But what blew me away to this day was it wasn't just us. We had behind us the sheriff. Okay, he's the Democrat, but still, the sheriff, the county treasurer, the county assessor, the superintendent of schools, all standing up for, to me, not only our Maricopa County elections workers, but really all employees in Maricopa County. And that was really inspiring. So, we need more of that. We wish that happened in every county, but unfortunately, it's not. And so we are in a situation where we might have county attorneys pitted against boards of supervisors, one supervisor pitted against another, the sheriff pitted against that. And this is where EOLDN is so important, because there is nothing more concerning and frightening than the belief that literally your liberty may be at risk. And so your professional reputation. So to be able to pick up the phone, to be able to go to EOLDN.org and request that legal assistance is a wonderful thing. I encourage all, just like David said, don't hesitate. Do not hesitate if you find yourself in that situation. We certainly hope that you don't, but if you do that. And finally, I do want to emphasize something that David touched on a little bit, which is taking care of yourself. I try and do this every time that I'm speaking to other people in elections. What you're doing is so important. And some days it may feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, but you have to take care of yourself first and foremost. And don't be ashamed of that. Don't be ashamed of that at all. Do you think that Devin Booker is ashamed because he needs to go to the trainer or needs to go to the doctor to get ready for the big game, to make sure that he's ready? It's the same thing for us. It's just, we don't typically, have to run, run around the gym in our job, but our minds need to be sharp. We need to have our emotions in check. And so whatever that is for you, whether it's going to therapy, meditation, prayer, going for a walk in the beautiful, Arizona mountains, whatever it is, I encourage you to do it so that you're ready for the big elections that are ahead of us. And please know that you've got great partners in Maricopa County and the Secretary of State's office. Anything you guys need, please do not ever hesitate to reach out. And I hope that we can do the same with all of you, because these 15 counties, we rise or fall together. And I'm just so proud to be a part of this team. So again, David, thanks for having me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Bill. And I just really want to stress that. I mean, that if there's one thing you take away from this webinar, it's that you're part of a community that has your back. EOLDN is part of that community. We all remember that those of us who've been working in this space for some time, I've been working in elections for 25 years, hopefully longer than most others on this call. But what the way election officials used to be was the hardest part of the job was getting anyone to understand what the heck you guys were doing. It was the anonymity of the job, the thought that people thought you showed up on Tuesday morning and set up the machines and that was all you did. We all know how much work has always gone into it, but now there's an additional layer of stress and harassment that's adding to this. Take time for yourself. And like Bill said, if there's anything even remotely work related that you think you need legal advice on or communication support on, ask us. We're here for you. We'll put you in touch with someone who can help walk you through that. EOLDN won't help you refinance your home. That's not what it does, but it will help you with anything that relates to your work, arguably, and your overall well-being to do your job, because that's what this is all about. I want to get into the nuts and bolts of this. I want to hand it off to the project lead on EOLDN, the person who makes everything happen, and is the person who makes sure that when a request comes in, we get back to you right away. We find someone to pair you with as soon as possible and checks in with you regularly, and that's Angie Pitha. Angie is a lawyer, and she's also worked on elections with the Denver County, Colorado Elections Division. So she has understanding of both of these things and the important work that all of you do. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Angie, to walk them through the process.
Thank you so much, David. And I want to thank Lisa and Bill for joining us today to talk about how EOLDN can help election officials under attack. They both serve on our advisory board because they believe that this project is valuable for election officials in Arizona and also across the country. I also want to thank all of you for joining us today, for spending your time with us today. I want to give you a statistic that I think will inform what I have to say to you today and what everyone does too. This is the statistic. EOLDN has now been receiving requests from election officials for almost 2.5 years since the inception of the project. This request form asks each requester, how did you hear about EOLDN? And over half of the respondents, these requesters, say that they heard about us from another election official. So what we always do is look for opportunities to bring in our champions in this work, which of course, Lisa, Bill, and Stephen, and we will certainly say that about him, and we miss him. But we want more, because that's how people learn about the service and they feel like they can trust us by telling us confidentially, of course, about what's happened to them. So we are so grateful to directly present to you today, and we hope that you share this information with your colleagues in Arizona and in other states. I'm now going to dive into how EOLDN works and how you or your colleagues can ask for our services if you ever need them. The services are, as David has outlined for us briefly, legal help and communications help. Speaking to the legal help piece, yes, it's true. We've done some good work. EOLDN has recruited volunteer attorneys and law firms in Arizona and across the country, and they are ready. They are ready to listen to your story, and they're ready to provide you with confidential support. It could be that your issue is that you've been threatened or harassed by people in your communities. It could be that your work of providing, of following procedures for elections that are free, fair, transparent, according to your own rules and codes, are being questioned even by perhaps people that you work with and report to. So these attorneys can help you with that situation as well. You've also seen that there are people that are being asked to provide testimony in criminal and civil investigations, or perhaps they are fearing that they are the target of those investigations. These are people who have also, election officials, who have also reached out to us and said, I don't know what to do. I am very afraid. Can you provide me with a lawyer to help me prepare for this and guide me through this? We can help in all these situations, and we have done so. I want to also speak for a moment about this communication service that David presented to you. EOLDN can connect an elections office or agency to our retained communications firm. This is also free of charge to your office or agency. And this service helps election officials address issues related to elections or election administration on behalf of your office or agency. Some examples include, excuse me, ongoing communication strategy advice during an election, or message development. Perhaps you would like some assistance with countering mis, dis, and malinformation in your communities, which has become so rampant throughout the entire country. Perhaps you could help with a response to an attack on the election integrity and security of your office or agency, or perhaps a media plan to help you tackle issues head on, which I will talk to you about in just a second when we return to our communications piece. A moment with eligibility. I want to tell you who's eligible for these services that we provide. Our services are available to current and former election officials and poll workers as well. Please do share this with the poll workers that work with you on occasion or seasonally. It's regardless of whether this official is staff, full-time, volunteer, paid or unpaid, and regardless of the personal political affiliation of the election official asking for help. As a public charity, CEIR may not participate or intervene in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to candidates for public office. So to turn to how to get in touch with us, you have heard about our website at EOLDN.org. That is where the process begins. If you or any of your colleagues have received threats or been harassed or facing efforts to undermine your official duties or would like assistance countering misinformation in your communities, we can help you with all that. Please ask us for help by submitting your request at EOLDN.org. We'll follow up with you right away. And from there, we can assess what help might benefit you. One more thing you could do, and that will help us be able to contact you on a regular basis. And so you can also you can receive updates on what EOLDN's been doing. And we can feature people such as our own Lisa Marra, who's about to speak to us as well, the subject of our most recent newsletter. When you visit EOLDN.org, you can sign up for our newsletter. I would love it if you would do that. The newsletter will provide those updates and give you ways to contact us, including just simply submitting the form for help. But we also have a toll-free number and a email inbox that is dedicated to receiving requests, and that's just simply help@EOLDN.org. Thank you very much. Now David will introduce our next speaker.
Thanks, Angie. And I just want to stress a couple of points. First, how important it is for you to spread the word of the availability of EOLDN to all of your staff, state level, county level, poll workers if they need it. You know, there will be a toolkit we'll share with you at the end. It'll help you share some of this just to get the word out. We don't want anyone to suffer needlessly without knowing if someone has their back, and we have your back. So wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to say, we're talking about Stephen Richard like he's in the hospital or has died or something. He just has a conflict. He's doing fine. He's probably sitting somewhere drinking his 14th Diet Coke of the day. So we love Stephen. He's been a huge help. As you know, he's been, as Bill mentioned, just so crucial in that partnership in Maricopa County, which has come under such scrutiny. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. So next, I want to introduce Lisa Marra, who you all know. Lisa's not just one of the best election officials in the country, and I say this in all sincerity, she's one of the best people. Lisa will claim she's president of my fan club, but in reality, I'm president of hers. She has had to put up with so much garbage over the last several years in Cochise County, where things were extremely challenging and where she received very little support from the people who took an oath to support her and her work. And she stuck with it. And she has continued to stay in this space, bring her expertise and skill and passion for democracy and serving the voters of Arizona. I just wanted to express my personal gratitude to her. Although we keep all of our requests confidential, she's one of those people who's been very open about it, and we're very grateful. We're very grateful that we had the opportunity to help her. I hope no one has to deal with the things Lisa has gone through in the future, and I hope if you ever do, that we can support you and you can land on your feet with as much grace as Lisa has. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the kind words, David, really, and Bill. I'm honored to be here with Arizona people today because I know you're a little busy right now preparing for 2 elections in March. So for those of you who are waiting for your programming requirements from me, I'm here. That's why I'm not emailing those to you right now. But my story isn't unique. It's not any different than anything any of you have gone through. Except, of course, my board of supervisors sued me personally for refusing to break the law. That's what's made me different and made my story different, because across the country, I don't believe that that's been very common. So when I tell people about EOLDN, my story is sort of surreal because, like all of you, Twitter saved my life in 2020, 2021, not so much now, but I saw information come out from people, and I thought, what is that program? And I knew who David Becker was, Bob Bauer, Ben Ginsburg, but I didn't really, I hadn't met any of them, right? I had never interacted with them. But I thought, you know what, if that group of attorneys thought that election officials needed help and they put this program in place, then it must be a really great program. And that's a wonderful resource. But I said to myself, why would I need it? Like, I had a whole county attorney's office. I had amazing attorneys, right? Like, why would I need that? Like, I'm an elected official, I got attorneys. Well, little did I know, right? So right after the 2020, just like all of you, the attacks started coming, threats. And that wasn't the hard part. That wasn't the worst part, because law enforcement was wonderful. The sheriff was wonderful. The FBI, ACTEC, they were wonderful. So what I would say to you is, don't rank your trauma. And that's a quote from Tina Barton, another election hero. Don't think that if you're going through tough times that that's normal, or that you should do that, or, well, it's not as bad as what other people have gone through. Don't do that. Like, this is unacceptable. If this happened to other people, if this happened to a city worker who was at the golf course or the meter readers or any, that wouldn't happen, right? So we're not going to let that happen to election officials. So in the spring of 2021, about a half dozen people started really complaining to the board, showing up to call the public, just demanding, elections are fake, the election director's on the take, she's committing all these crimes. And again, it's not okay for people to accuse you of crimes with no evidence, right? So that went on forever. And what really was problematic was when I testified to Congress in August of 2022, the House Oversight Committee. Like most of you, you don't really say no when you get an invitation to speak to those groups, because they're subpoenas, basically. So when that happened, I told the story of where we were in Arizona. And that really ramped up on a national scale issues, right? From Mike Lindell, Seth Ketchel, Mike Flynn. So then I started getting threats and emails and phone calls 24/7 from all over the world. And some of the news stories that came out were like, well, she hasn't really been threatened because we did public records requests and they didn't provide any of this stuff. So she really wasn't threatened. You know what? Threats get reported to the FBI and to ACTIC and law enforcement. So you want to know what threats I got? Go public records, the FBI, right? It's ridiculous. But we had some reporters, and I use that term loosely, who started writing just hit reports, right? Not calling for quotes, not doing any research. And behind that email show was some Board of Supervisors and the county reporter. So after that testimony to Congress, there was a real push to get me fired. So people started emailing the board, emailing the county manager. I don't have a right to have an opinion. I can't speak up. I can't talk about elections. And I certainly cannot defend Maricopa. I cannot say that that election was not stolen. That was a big thing. And I still continue to defend Maricopa, because I defend every single one of you in Arizona, because I don't know about Chicago. I'm not an election official there. I know Arizona, and I know all of you. So I will continue to do that. So after that, it became really evident I needed help. And I spoke to the county attorney, again, wonderful people, but these were personal things, right? They weren't work related enough for the county attorney, like they just couldn't do anything. So I remember after like the 15th hit story, I went to the EOLDN website, the place I thought I would never need their services of, and put in a request. And the next morning I had gotten an email back that said, we're gonna, pair you up with an attorney. And again, it was easy, it was safe, it's secure, it's confidential, it's no cost. Like, the last thing an election official should worry about is attorneys. Attorneys, like, even to get a phone conversation of 30 minutes, that can be $200 and up. So who has that, right? We're government employees. We're not here for the money. And within a day, I did get connected with an attorney, and EOLDN made it very clear that, I would interview this attorney. If I didn't think that was the person for me, they would find another one for me, right? It was fabulous. So the attorney reached out to me. He is an attorney in Chicago, and his name is Mike Goldberg. That's not a secret, because it's in the EOLDN newsletter. And he emailed me right away and said, here's my cell phone, call me as soon as you can. I'm out of the country, but if I don't pick up, I'll call you back. And I was like, I don't want to call it out of the country. Like, it could be late, whatever. And he's like, I don't care. He was in Norway. there's a time difference. I don't know what it is, but he didn't care. When I called, I don't know what time it was here, but it was like 10 o'clock at night there. And he listened to my whole story and he's like, lady, you need an attorney. I was like, I think so. So he immediately sent cease and desist letters to several people and explained to the board that I did have a right of free speech and I could say whatever I wanted about anything I wanted, because I was never bad mouth in the county, right? I was just defending all of you and how we do things in Arizona. So that didn't die down. It stopped the hit pieces, but I'm still living rent free in people's heads because they're still bringing me up at Call to Public. And the board in October 2022 demanded a full hand count. I think we all remember that in Arizona, right? Well, that was October, late October. We had a little bit of an election going on, right? We were busy. So we went to court. We know how that all turned out. The board lost, right? We cannot do full hand counts. Let's make that clear in case anybody didn't know that. Right after that, then they sued me personally for refusing to break the law in the court order. They wanted the ballots. And it was a couple days before the election. We were tabulating ballots. I knew there was going to be a recount. The last thing I was going to do is let those ballots go. So I remember calling Mike, my attorney, that weekend. It was like a Thursday when they served me. I hadn't been grocery shopping like all of you. You know how it is, busy. Hadn't been grocery shopping. Went to Sierra Vista to grocery shop. It was rainy that day. I was in the car, called Mike, and I can't even really talk about it a lot because like I tear up. Like I felt so alone. And I wasn't alone. I had friends, I had family, I had county attorney. But I was alone because my employer did not support me at all. Nobody stood up, not anybody in HR, not the county manager, nobody. And I felt so alone. And I told Mike, I had, sent him the paperwork and he's like, what do you want to do? I can fly out there. I can be there tomorrow. We'll be in court Monday. Like, what do you want to do? And he saved my life. I didn't know what else to do. Fortunately, by the time Monday came around, the board had dismissed their own lawsuit because they thought, oh, that's probably a bad idea, right? So time went on after that. We kind of know what happened, right? If you get sued personally, I'm going to tell you right now, you cannot continue to work for that employer. Okay, let's just make that clear, right? So I knew I was going to have to leave. I also knew I had a recount coming up. I had all these things to do. So we got through all that. And then it turned out that I needed a specialized employment lawyer. So I worked with Mike to find somebody here and hired that person and then paid for that person out of my settlement, because we all know that I filed all the paperwork to sue the board and then they wanted to settle out of court. They didn't want to go to court. So that was my story with EOLDN. And I just cannot tell you how much I support this program. And my sincere hope, and everyone's hope on this panel, is that you never need this service. That would be great. Angie never had to do another email again. That would be so great. But you might not need it, but a coworker might. Another election official might. So know the resource, okay? It's easy. It is very secure. David is exactly right. Unless you make it public, nobody knows. Please bookmark EOLDN.org and don't hesitate to reach out to them. If you think you need an attorney, you probably need an attorney. Every single one of you is an election hero, and nobody deserves the treatment that anybody's gone through in our great state. You just don't. EOLDN is here for you like they've been for me. And I'll tell you, just recently in December, Mike Goldberg was here in Arizona because he has a practice here. He's licensed here as well, which is why I could use him, although he's out of Chicago. I got to meet him and his wife and his 3 kids, all lawyers, and his mom and dad. His dad started the firm. And I'll tell you what, it was an emotional meeting. I was so grateful, and they were such supporters of election officials, and they continue to watch what happens in Arizona. And I can tell you that they pass on all their good wishes to everybody in Arizona, because they say, please keep doing the good work you're doing. And I hope EOLDN is able to keep doing the good work they're doing. So that's my story, and I'm going to turn it back to David now.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. I also want to be clear, The services are pro bono and there's no legal obligation for you to buy a dinner for your lawyer and his whole extended family if they come visit you, but you can if you want to. With that, I want to go back to Angie really quickly. We talked a little bit about the communications assistance, and we wanted to give you kind of an example of how that was used. And Angie has a really good example of that, just to give you an idea of how that those requests play out. Go ahead, Angie.
Yeah, thank you, David. I do have a really good example. This is another a story that is unfortunately more and more common in this country, but this story, I believe, has a good ending to it. And it's because we were able to match this person with communications support to guide them through these needs that this person had. So who is this mystery person? This is Tommy Gong, the Chief Deputy Clerk Recorder for Contra Costa County, California. He had heard that EOLDN had added the free communications support in the fall of 2022. And he immediately contacted EOLDN to set up a virtual consultation. And to quote him in a webinar that he helped us with for the California election officials, he jumped on it. So I like that vigorous language. He first reached out because he was concerned about the effectiveness of his existing communication materials. So he got feedback from the firm that EOLDN has retained to see how those materials could be improved. And he got feedback, it was quite extensive. It was on their materials overall, including specific graphics and terminology, their media plan, and press releases. So while he was getting all of this very good help, and he had proactively acted to improve his materials by taking advantage of this free communication support, a tricky public situation emerged during that time. And this was the situation. A district attorney in California had indicted the president of a poll worker management system that Contra Costa, and other counties across the country were using. And it became a national story, and counties across the country began publicly questioning this system and then also publicly dropping the system or distancing themselves from the system. But Tommy Gong, decided that his county would keep using this poll worker management system, and his office received threatening messages about that decision. So he was already talking with the communications firm that EOLDN has retained, and he said, I think I have another issue that I'd like to work with you on. How do we get in front of this emerging story? We are worried that a dominant narrative will set in about this system and the fact that we decided to keep using it. So our firm that we work with said, let's create a media strategy for you. Let's address this problem. And so they did. They identified media outlets that they thought would be, fair relayers of this story and of the messages that Tommy and his office had to give to the public. And one of the ways that they messaged this out was they said, we're sticking with the system and this is why. So they gave reasons to the public to kind of try to settle this question. But also they told the public, we've received threatening messages about this. And we do not accept this. This is outrageous and unacceptable. So by working on this media narrative with the EOLDN retained firm, they were able to achieve a couple of goals. One, like further messaging to the public that this sort of threats and harassment is constant and it can be triggered by so many news reports or assumptions that may be true or perhaps are not true. But also, Tommy said specifically, we have worked very hard on maintaining public trust in elections in the Bay Area. I want to shore that up. And so this is work that the communications firm did for him, and he was very pleased with the result. If you and your colleagues identify ways that EOLDN can help you with these communication struggles, please let us know. Again, EOLDN.org, we have a specific communications form, so you'll find that form asking for communications help, and you can fill it out and send it to us, and we'll take a look and get right back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. All right, I think we're at the Q&A portion of the webinar, right, Liz? And they can insert questions into the Q&A, which you'll find at the bottom of the Zoom window. I don't think we have any yet, correct?
Correct.
All
can wait a minute.
Yeah, we'll wait a minute if anyone has any. And don't feel obligated. We're happy to give you a little bit of time back in your day as well. But you've got us all here, and we're ready to answer if you have anything going on. I want to add one other quick point while we're waiting. And that's this. You know, we've talked a lot about this community and having each other's back, and that's really important. It's at the core of what we do. I got asked just earlier this week, do you have any plans to sunset EOLDN? Do you have any plans to, you know, that'll only go past the 2024 election? And I said, our plan is that EOLDN will exist as long as there is a demand. I will be thrilled to shut EOLDN down when there's no longer any need for it, but it will exist for as long as anyone has a need. So we're absolutely going to be operational in 2025, 2026 foreseeable future, unless this insanity passes somehow, which I sadly don't think is going to happen miraculously as a result of one election. So we're going to be here until we know every election official is able to do their job with feelings of safety, knowing they have a community behind them, is supported by their government leaders. So do not worry about that at all.
David, we've got one question. How is the service different from the designated county council that already exists?
So ideally, your county council will cover almost anything that you need and view your job duties fairly expansively and support you in that role. But we know, and we just heard from Lisa, that's not always the case. And so, you know, I encourage you to, if you've got a great relationship with your county council and they're supporting you and you're getting everything you need, EOLDN is not saying it's better than your county council. I mean, they are. Please rely upon any resources you have available. EOLDN is there if you need backup, if you need something else that you're not getting. So we're absolutely not saying bypass your normal operations. We want you to go to your county council and for them to say, we have your back. You don't have to go to anyone else. But if that doesn't happen, and sadly, we've seen that not happen in many places, and it's not just Cochise County, it's not just in Arizona. We're getting this all over the country, dozens of states, dozens of counties, where we're hearing stories along these lines. Don't hesitate to reach out to us.
And I would add to that, David, even, you know, I've talked about how we've been very unified at Maricopa County, but even in Maricopa County, you know, without getting into any particulars, there were a couple of times where we at the Board of Supervisors were in some situations where we were wondering whether our county attorney would represent us. And I got to tell you, that gave me peace of mind to know that EOLDN was there for us.
I mean, and it might be more than attorneys. I mean, I won't reveal the identity of this place or where it was, but there was a place where an election official called me literally saying that the sheriff of the county was banging on the doors of her office, trying to seize the voting machines, which was against the law. And what should she do? And we were able to provide that election official with some assistance. You know, this is the world we live in. This is fortunately not happening everywhere, but it's not that uncommon. Lisa, you kind of alluded to something similar, that there are these misguided, deluded, fueled by disinformation efforts to seize voting equipment, which is against the law, to break the chain of custody, to put hardware and software at risk, to access data and confidential election information that they shouldn't access under misguided beliefs that it's going to somehow show the massive amounts of fraud that doesn't exist. So we know that's happening. And sometimes in some instances, we have seen the local law enforcement who was supposedly there to protect the election officials and support their work be part of that.
We've just got a comment in the Q&A, and I'll just read it out loud. It's really thoughtful. This is from Bob Bartzmeyer. From my 35 years as an elected and appointed election official in Missouri, Florida, New Mexico, and Arizona, I had never experienced personal harassment as I did in Cochise County over the short 5 months after Lisa Marra left there as elections director. I wish I had known of your services while I was in Cochise County. I returned back to La Paz County as elections director, a job I had before I left for Cochise County. Thank you for your services.
Can I just say, first of all, Bob, thank you for being on this call. Thank you for all you're doing. A lot of you who know me have heard me say this. We in the elections community, one of my favorite questions to ask election officials is, how did you get into this job? And almost all of the election officials who've done it for some time will tell you it was by accident. You know, they applied for a job at some point in their lives that, you know, they didn't go to college and study election administration, that's for sure. And they found it by accident. And when they got there, they found a calling. I'm reading, you know, in a community. I'm reading, Bob, I mean, 4 states, Missouri, Florida, New Mexico, Arizona. By the way, probably various points in all 4 of those states, national swing states where scrutiny was being applied to everything that was being done. And you see this abuse happen in some place like Cochise County, you experience it. And what do? You continue being an election official. This is a story I hear time and time again. We talk a lot about the attrition of election officials, the people who've left, and there have been, it's been unbearable for so many, but there's been so many who, you know, like Bob, you, and like Lisa, you, I mean, who, you know, you left a bad experience and then you continue to do the work elsewhere because it's a calling. I mean, it is something. We will be there for you. We're going to keep being there for you. EOLDN is a part of CEIR's work. We do other work as well. We're going to do research that shows the good work that you're doing. We're going, you know, I work a lot with the media to talk to educate voters about how the election process works and why they can trust it. But just thank you, and thank you for sharing that story.
And I just wanted to add, Bob, great, really appreciated your appearance on the CNN story that Lisa referenced earlier. You guys did a great job.
Yeah, I thought I'd heard your name before, Bob. Hope to meet you in person one of these days.
I don't think we have any other questions. So David, do you want to tell people how they can keep in touch with EOLDN and spread the word?
Yeah, can you put the slide up? So you'll see a slide now. There's a website that will give you a digital toolkit to share with your colleagues. It'll allow you to use email, social media, and other things to just spread the word, you know, to the degree that you can be our voices out there to let people know. So there's no lag time, like, you know, some experience where they have a problem and they don't know that there's a service available to them. We want to be able to respond to your needs right when they happen. So to the degree you can spread the word about this, that's great. It's EOLDN.digital toolkit. And I believe, am I right, Liz, that if they scan in this QR code, they will be taken directly to that website, which will help walk them through how that digital toolkit works. So we'll leave that up for a minute or two so folks can scan that in if they want. And I should also say, feel free to reach out to us. First of all, sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter is a great way to keep in touch with us. You can also sign on for the separate CEIR newsletter, which has other information. Often it overlaps, but sometimes it's a little extra. And then if you ever need to reach out to us, just please do. You can reach out to us directly through a variety of means. Everything that comes through EOLDN, Angie sees. I think I see almost all of it. So this is not some you know, factory setup. This is, we know the people who've requested assistance. We know what help they've needed. We know personally what you're going through. If we can ever, you know, come talk to a meeting of Arizona election officials, we'd be thrilled to do that as well.
Okay, great. I think we'll leave it there. You know how to get in touch with EOLDN if you need it. And thanks so much for your service. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.